This Brighton season preview edition of the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks, content and contests, including our NFL Win Totals contest with a $1,000 prize. Join today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Welcome everybody to the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. My name is Malcolm Bamford, coming to you from Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. And we are carrying on our 20-team preview ahead of the start of the Premier League season next Friday night, with a look ahead at the chances of Brighton and Hove Albion. Joining me on this Saturday evening is Mr. Barry Penaluna. Barry, what's happening?
Evening, Malcolm. How we doing?
Very well, thank you, Baz. Go on then, look at his little face. Look at Barry's little face. He's all happy. Now, I know that we're not putting these out in any kind of sequence. However, it's 6:30 on Saturday and the Football League kicked off this afternoon. So, as an advertisement for our show, Baz, if anyone's listening for the first time, particularly Brighton fans, there's a reason Barry's got a very happy little face. And that's Baz, because you smashed the granny out of the Football League today. We put an EFL show out the other night. We put out some futures, some divisional picks. Then we gave out some picks for each division. Mine were absolute shit. I don't think I picked a winner. However, I've still got one to go. Coventry could save my bacon, but no. Did Charlton win, Baz? Well, they might have done.
Off the top of my head. Was that one of your...
I think they did. I might have had a winner. Anyway.
Charlton did win 1-0, yes.
No, so you see, shut up then. I was very much on the undercard, Baz, because you gave out absolutely everything, didn't you, son?
Oh, only slightly. I did Wigan to beat Derby as an underdog, 9-2, plus 450, tick. I tipped MK Dons as an underdog, 9-2, to beat Wrexham, 5-3, smashed them, went 2-0 up, they were 3-1 up, 4-2 up, everything, just smashed them. And I tipped goals in the Barnsley game.
You fucked this up a bit, didn't you?
Under-egged it a little bit. I tipped Barnsley to score, particularly Barnsley goals. I said we'd take Barnsley to score 2 or more, just short of evens, 10-11, minus 110. 7-0 Barnsley. I said the reason for that pick was Barnsley done me good. At home last year, Barnsley were good for goals. I would have loved to have been on a ladder in that one. That crew, all three of those cruised in, and I got on them at a combined total of just short of 60-1.
That's ridiculous, Baz.
Absolutely smashed it today. So 2 dogs, 2 winners. Add in that Barnsley play, absolutely smashed it. So yeah, if you are listening, and you follow,
we gave out one pick in each division. It's not like we picked all the games and we selected 3 winners. Baz gave out 3 picks. That was the results of them. I
mean, I've got 2 more to come tomorrow, and by the time this goes out, you might have time to get on it. But yeah, I've backed Ipswich to beat Sunderland tomorrow as an underdog, and over 2.5 goals in that Ipswich Sunderland game as well. So of our picks, I've still got 2 to come tomorrow, but absolutely smashed it today. So
well done,
if you are someone who follows us on Twitter and that sort of place, give a little bit of love for the tweets we've put out on that. Otherwise, if you're not, start listening because it's good. Yeah,
it's a great example. I mean, we don't smash out 60-1 winners every week, but we sometimes do okay, Baz. We've had more good weeks than bad. Like I say, any Brighton fans who are new to us, find us in the usual places, wherever you found us here. Plus Spotify, Apple, Google, etc. Premier League Gambling Podcast. We are on Twitter at SGPN Premier. And the YouTube is Premier League Gambling Podcast. We'll do a weekly pick show for the Premier League. We'll do a review show. We'll do midweek stuff, which can be EFL, Champions League, internationals, cup competitions. A lot of silliness, a few picks, and occasionally we throw out a 60-1 little lacquer. So yeah, good effort that, Baz. But today is all about Brighton and Hove Albion. Really intriguing one going forwards. We said we recorded Man City yesterday, and it was a bit boring because you didn't really know which way they were going to go. Brighton have got all the possibilities laid out in front of them. They could make a run for the top 4 if they carry on the arc of improvement. They could struggle a little bit with the Europa League. It's fascinating what Brighton could do this year. They finished 6th last season with 62 points, which did fire them into Europa League for the first time in their history, competing in Europe. I bet their supporters are mad excited. Just like we are a little bit for the Champions League draw. I bet the Brighton fans are waiting for that Europa League draw to see where they can just the passports out and get out and about. So that's exciting for them. But they just had a great season, Baz. It was really weird because Potter left and there was a lot of sort of gnashing of teeth and consternation about what the departure of Potter would mean for Brighton when he went to Chelsea. And Zerbi came in. He just improved them. He improved the way they played. He improved players. And then they had lots of players who had career years, particularly in the second half. Matoma was great. Gross was outstanding. Caicedo. And Siso came on the scene. Ferguson with a hell of a high ceiling. Estupinan. Loads of really good players. Obviously brought through as they had been by Dan Ashworth in this Brighton way over the last few years. And they were just outstanding. They were 4th in goals scored in the league. They scored 72 goals. They were 9th in goals conceded, actually. They conceded more goals than Palace. They were in the same ballpark, it seems like West Ham and Bournemouth when it came to goals conceded. But just as a general overview, Baz, I mean, they were kind of the neutrals' darlings last season, Brighton, and you couldn't help but enjoy what they were up to.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I was going to say the same. They've almost become everyone's second favourite team, haven't they? Because they are an entertaining team to watch. And it was good to go and see them get big results against big teams, particularly for us last season. Chasing the top 4, there was times where Brighton were getting results against teams in and around us, which was a massive help. I mean, at one point, they probably got a little bit too close for comfort. They were in the top 4 race for a while. Unlucky to get pipped for 5th place by Liverpool, but they'll be, as you say, delighted to be in the Europa Cup this year. I think we'll see more of the same. I think they'll continue to be an entertaining side and a tough team to come up against. I mean, you mentioned the goals, 4th top scoring. And yet the top scorer was only on 12 goals. They spread it around really well, don't they? McAllister,
yeah, absolutely.
Gross, Mitoma and Ferguson all in double figures. I mean, I can't imagine there's another team in the Premier League who had 4 players in double figures last season. So, yeah, tons of options. And it's intriguing, as you mentioned, their recruitment over the years. Mitoma and then Siso were the 2 that came out the woodwork last year. Nobody was really talking about either of those at the start of the season. By the end of the season, everyone was talking about them. And you look over the years at names who have left for big fees, players like Cucurella, Basuma, Trossard, Ben White. McAllister's just gone. Caicedo looks likely to be moving on. I mean, they do amazing business, don't they? Because they're not buying all these players in for massive fees. And they play a hard game when it comes to selling these players. Obviously, McAllister went cheap, but it seems that was a unavoidable one in terms of his buyout clause. But Caicedo could have left for Arsenal in January. Brighton were not letting him go on the cheap, and they'll get the price they want. And they've done the same with Cucurella, Trossard, Basuma, Ben White. They'll get the price they want, or they don't go anywhere. So the business they do is brilliant. So intriguing, really. See who comes out the woodwork, because there's always, every year there'll be another player turns up at Brighton or comes out of the sort of the background at Brighton to emerge as a really, really quality player. So yeah, intriguing to see who the next one up is.
It's good for the league as well, I think, Brad. The way they do the business, the way they play, the way they've come along and just shaking stuff up a little bit. It's good for the league and Brighton are up there with Newcastle and Villa, and then teams like Brentford as well, who are just trying to make change that status quo a little bit. And I'm all for it. We've always had a conversation, Baz, about what Brighton mean to you, what whichever team we're covering mean to you, and I can't really. I mean, I go back a little bit further than you. I remember them knocking us out the cup, Baz, in about 1983 when Trelford Mills. Do you know the name Trelford Mills? Is that name?
Trelford Mills.
Yeah. Because if you go down to town now, or go to Duke of Wellington down here, and find any man over the age of 50 and say the name Trellbed Mills, you just start swearing. Yeah. You just start swearing at you. According to my dad, it remains the worst refereeing display ever to this day. When Brighton knocked us out the cup. But my main sort of recent memory was when we pipped them to win the league. And that Modiarmi goal that hit him off the ankle and just looped in, because Brighton were going to win the championship before that. Yeah. They were winning that game. We got a dodgy penalty, I seem to recall. And then Modiarmi scored that goal. Johan Gouffran volley was scored 40 yards wide until it hit Diarmi. 2 minutes later, Perez scored. I was in the bath, Baz, watching that. And I remember thrashing around in the bath like an otter in a pepper pot when Perez slotted us 2-1 up. And then on the last day of the season, the keeper threw one in. Was it? Can't remember the name. Was it Button, maybe, the keeper?
Might have been, yeah.
He hoiked a Jack Grealish one in, and Newcastle ended up winning the league. But apart from that, so Brighton were kind of rivals a little bit, but they've roughly stayed out of our way and haven't annoyed me too much over the years, Baz.
Yeah, I've been saying I haven't got much thoughts historically between Newcastle and Brighton. As I say, I have enjoyed watching them, but undoubtedly they're in a similar ballpark to us now. We know we'll not get an easy game off them this season, so there'll be no love lost once the season starts. But I don't feel offended or enamoured with Brighton to any great extent.
Yeah, fair enough. We're going to run through some numbers and make some picks, Baz. I'll tell you about the Patreon first. The Sports Gambling Podcast Patreon, exclusive contests in there, including the NFL Win Totals contest. That's got a $1,000 first place prize. There's the monthly SGP Stories podcast, which is an ad-free, uncensored show highlighting the best stories from decades of being DJs. The Discord channel just for our patrons. And as always, our network will have the picks and content for free. sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. So, to win the league, Baz, Brighton are 100-1. Top four finish is 15-2, plus 750. To miss the top four, they're 1-16. The top six finish is 9-4, plus 225. To miss the top six, they are 1-3, minus 300. The top half finish is 1-4, minus 400. Bottom half finish 11-4, plus 375. On the handicap, they are getting a 30-point head start. Just looking for some patterns and trends, really, in what they did last year. They had very similar home and away records. Nothing really to split those. And they kind of played to a similar level all season. They were never really, didn't go through a bad patch or a really good 10 games in a row winning streak, anything like that. They maintained their levels quite consistently. A lot of highlights in there. They won at Man United on the first day. They beat Graham Potter's Chelsea 4-1, which felt like a big sort of coming of age thing for De Zerbi's team. That day is when Potter went back to Chelsea. They beat Wolves 6-0. They 1-0 against Manchester United at the end of the season when they scored. I think we were recording live, but they scored a penalty right in the 98th minute or what have you with the stupid Luke Shaw handball. A 3-0 win at Arsenal. I couldn't even remember that. I saw that right near the end of the season. I saw that on the list tonight. And I'd have bet you £1 million that didn't happen. Like, I couldn't remember that even a little bit.
That was part of Arsenal blowing it, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And then the 3-0 home win against Liverpool as well. However, they did have a propensity to throw in some shockers as well, particularly towards the end of the season. There was the 3-1 at Nottingham Forest, which was a big win in terms of Forest staying up. We took Forest that night. The 5-1 at home to Everton, Baz, you tipped Everton. These Brighton fans are going to think we do nothing but tip winners, which is quite simply not true. But we just seen Brighton being involved in quite a lot of the good stuff we had. He came up to Newcastle and got thumped 4-1 in one of the weirdest displays I've ever seen. I don't know what Brighton were playing at. If in 10 years' time I watch a Netflix documentary on how that game was fixed by the Arabs, I will not be surprised even a little bit, because the way Brighton played looked like they just had their pockets full of cash. Like they didn't attempt to get out their own 6-yard box in the first half. And that's kind of the problem I see with them, because De Zerbi seems to have, obviously, the plaudits they get for the type of football they play, playing out from the back. He seems to have taken it in pre-season, or the back end of last year as well, to a whole new level. Like, he really wants to make sure we cannot pass the ball further than 6 inches, especially from a goal kick. And I just think it's going to cause mayhem, Baz. I think it's going to undo them a little bit. The Europa League is notoriously difficult. I have no idea why. To play on, you can play on a Wednesday, Saturday, but you can't play on a Thursday, Sunday. Same thing in it, Baz. Just change their watches. So I'm going to fade Brighton a little bit here. I do think, like we've already said about the defensive record, and I think this determination to play this way is going to cost them more goals. There were quite a lot of patterns. They conceded a load of goals on the road. They conceded 95% of away games. They conceded at least twice in 50% of them. So an opposition team total, if you want to go opposition over 1.5, that is always going to be live. They scored in both halves 47% of the time. So there's goals galore everywhere. And the final little steer I've got here is that the match goals, Baz, there was 5 or more match goals in 26% of their games. That's 1 game in 4. And that's never a 4-to-1 shot, is it? Over 4.5 goals, like. So you back that every week and you're in profit next season. Anything jump off the page to you, Baz?
I think before going to that, I mean, we haven't really talked about the ins and outs, have we yet?
Ins and outs, of course, yeah.
Mention they have signed João Pedro from Watford.
Like him, really like him.
Yeah, Newcastle were interested in him for a while, weren't they? Couldn't get a deal done with Watford around this time last year. But yeah, I think he could be a good signing because I think Undav's gone now, hasn't he? Welbeck's getting on, and João Pedro might just fill in where Welbeck has been. Verbruggen has come in goal with Sanchez going out to Chelsea. Sanchez will go there to cover for Kepa with obviously Mendy going. They've signed a centre-back, Igor, don't know much about him, and Milner has arrived. I hope Milner isn't the Caicedo replacement because Caicedo looks surely to be going out the door following McAllister, who obviously went to Liverpool. And that's a concern. I think if Caicedo goes, who does come in there? I think they'll need to replace him. But we'll see. So as I say, they probably look a bit weaker, don't they? They've got McAllister and Caicedo going out, two big teams. So two big players.
Until they pull 2 names that you've never heard about their arse, and they come in and be absolutely brilliant. Like
this is exactly the thing. They've managed over the years to lose players like Trossard and Bissouma, who was flying for them at the time. Ben White. They've always managed. They've never struggled when they lose these players, and that might be the case again. But I see a little bit of regression. I think outside of the top 6 this time round, but not far behind. To finish outside the top 6 was 1 to 3. It's a bit too short, and I'm not confident enough in them having enough regression to finish in the bottom half at 11 to 4. Doesn't really interest me. There was a couple of things. I think it's a bit boring, a bit repetitive because we've done this a few times. But to finish higher than Spurs plus money, 5 to 4 plus 125. I still have Spurs.
That's a great bet, Baz.
9th or 10th. And even if Spurs have a better season than I'm anticipating for them, I think Brighton are still capable of finishing above them. So even if Spurs were to finish in 7th, which would probably be about where their fans would expect them to be, Brighton could still finish 5th or 6th and finish above Spurs. So the pick for me would be Brighton to finish higher than Spurs at 5 to 4 plus 125. I'm interested to know what you think about the goal scorer market. Have you looked?
That is what I have made a pick for. I'm just literally, as you said that, Baz, I was dragging it up, because I've made 2 picks and one of them is out of that market. I
thought you might have done, so I'll let you run with that, and then give you my thoughts.
Do you have a thought who I might have picked?
No.
Okay.
I think it's difficult, but I think you look at the odds and you think there's got to be value here among some of them. I mean, maybe Ferguson would possibly be one, but we'll see where you've gone. Where you've gone, Malcolm? Talk to us.
So the market there, top Brighton goal scorer is Evan Ferguson, heads that market at 11 to 4. João Pedro's 100 to 30, Matoma 5 to 1, and Ciso 11 to 2, Danny Welbeck 13 to 2, Solly March 8 to 1, Undav 9 to 1, Gross 10 to 1. Yeah, you could throw a blanket over 8 of them there. That's amazing. My pick is going to be Danny Welbeck, but 13-2 plus 650. Now, opportunity is key here, obviously. But I watched a lot of the summer series in the States because obviously Newcastle were playing in it, and I knew we were doing all these shows, so I wanted to get a beat. And Welbeck was starting games there. He started games with Pedro as well. Of all those players listed, really, I think it's only Ferguson who's going to play down the middle. Pedro isn't, Matoma isn't, and Ciso, March, Undav can do, but I think he's going to be further down the pecking order. Welbeck just looks like he's not guaranteed a place, but especially when Europa League starts, I think he's going to get more than his fair share of minutes. Like Ferguson has some injuries. Pedro's not a prolific goal scorer, and he's coming into the league. And I fancy a little bit of regression from Matoma. He's a good player, but he's going to find it a little bit difficult. And again, he's one of these inconsistent wingers. I just think opportunity knocks for Danny Welbeck, like stood in the middle of the pitch in a good side. We're going to create a lot of chances and score a lot of goals. Danny Welbeck's going to be the one stood on the edge of the 6-yard box when the ball's fizzing its way backwards and forwards across goal. So I thought he was a huge price pass at 13-2. My other pick is in the match market. I think Aston Villa are a great price to finish above Brighton. I do think there's going to be regression. And I think Villa have look a lot more solid. I've got them close together as it happens. I've got Villa 7th and Brighton 8th. But if Villa finish 6th and Brighton finish 9th, it wouldn't surprise me. But I would be surprised the other way around. So 4-5 minus 125. I actually kind of prefer your Spurs pick, Baz. Now I've heard it. Your pick's a bigger price. And if the two, I would probably go with your Spurs one. But yeah, did you have a top scorer pick then, Barry?
I didn't pick one out. I just looked at the odds, and I thought Ferguson. I would prefer Ferguson over Welbeck. In terms of league goals, Premier League goals last year, they both scored 6. Ferguson done that with 10 starts. Welbeck done it with 21. Yeah. And that was what would concern me. It's took Welbeck, he's scored less than 1 in 3. Ferguson scored more than 1 in 2 in terms of his starts. I don't know. I think Welbeck's going to be getting phased out more and more. It's a big price. I can see why you would be tempted by him. You'll certainly get goals. But, I mean, the thing is, like I said before, they do spread it around a lot. So you're not looking for someone to have to score 20 goals to be Brighton's top scorer. 10, 11 could be enough to do it. So, I wouldn't talk you off it. I think I prefer Ferguson, though, at 11-4.
Okay, let's have a look at some fantasy league stuff as well. Brighton, a lot of Brighton players have been talked about for fantasy purposes. I'll tell you about Underdog Fantasy, one of our headline sponsors here. The NFL season is right around the corner. Underdog Pick'em is a great way to get down on a ton of NFL player props and available in loads of markets too. Plenty of opportunities to win in their daily MLB contests, and make sure to enter Best Ball Mania 4, where the first place gets $3 million. Head over to underdogfantasy.com. Use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's underdogfantasy.com. Promo code SGPN. So all these annoying templates, Baz, have got several must-have Brighton players. Although I think they've changed. Matoma was must-have about 10 days ago. And now I think he's must-not-have, apparently, for whatever reason. But you're better at this than me, so... the Brighton players that stand out, Baz. Oh, sorry, Estupiñán was the other one. Estupiñán and Matoma were the must-haves.
Yeah, I mean, Estupiñán still remains the case. I think he'll be in a very high percentage of teams. He's at 5 million. He's cheap enough for a defender. But it's the attacking returns. He gets so far up that left side, whipping balls in, so that he can, get you a lot of the attacking returns. He scored 128 points last year, Estupiñán. Let's just see how many games he started to get that. He started 31, so he did start most of the season. But he got 7 assists last season, 1 goal. So good for attacking returns. 5 million. Estupiñán will definitely be popular. Obviously, you mentioned the big names from last year was March, Matoma, and Ciso in those attacking midfield roles. But actually, it was Pascal Gross who was the top scoring option from Brighton last year. Pascal Gross scored 159 points last year. So those three, Gross, March, and Matoma, are all 6.5 million. I can see a bit of regression from Matoma. I think I would rather, if I'm going for the 6.5 million, March is the one for me. I think I would go for. But I'm still tempted. As I said a couple of weeks ago, with Enciso, he's 5.5 million, so you're making a 1 million saving on Enciso. He only started 7 games last season. He got 4 goals and 3 assists. I feel he's going to be involved more, but I think the reason he is 1 million cheaper is because there is a risk that he is in and out, and a bit more of a risk in terms of his minutes. In the forward positions, it's obviously Ferguson at 7 million. That would stand out at the moment. But I think you've got to keep an eye on Pedro. If Pedro does become a regular starter in this Brighton team at 5.5 million, I think he could possibly become a no-brainer as a third striker, where you can sort of draft him in and out on a weekly basis, as and when needed. Sit him on the bench when you don't want to use him. But at 5.5 million, Pedro could emerge as a good option. And another one who caught a few eyes in one of their recent friendlies was Adingra, just another one for the watch list, really. He scored a couple of goals in the friendly against Brentford, I think it was, over in the USA. So, yeah, he's been a bit more active. He's played in most of their recent friendlies. So, yeah, want to keep an eye on Simon Adingra from the Ivory Coast, who could be the one to emerge and be the next star.
Yeah, pretty much. You've covered all the big names, Baz. I mean, I'd be loath to put a defender in just because I think they're going to concede a ton of goals. But of the rest, it's opportunity, and it's picking a player who's definitely going to start because of Matoma, Ferguson, Welbeck, João Pedro. You're just not entirely sure, and Ciso, how much minutes are going to get. Especially, we had you and our FPL expert on a few weeks ago, and he said when the European stuff starts, that's when things really get complicated with teams playing in Europe. So they might the Europa League lineup and the Sunday Premier League lineup might change. Did you know, Baz, Brighton and Hove Albion have never had a player whose surname starts with Q play in their history? Now, why do you think I'm saying that, Baz?
Because it's time to give us the Fantasy League code for our fantasy listeners.
Yeah, so we do have a listener league. Any of you Brighton fans want to get involved in the listener league? We have some money up for grabs, 150 quid in cash. There's about 50 players in there at the minute, so a little over round. We've got some merch up for grabs as well. We've got the Egg and a Cup, not to mention the Glory. The code you need is CVVQAB, and that is Caicedo, Veltman, Quarter, Adingra, Buonanotte. CVVQAB. I just said quarter, Baz. I couldn't think of another word to say. And I think, Baz, that is Brighton and Hove Albion covered and in the car. And anything else you want to pipe up with?
No, that's it from me. Let's move on to the next one. We're ready.
We'll move on to the next one. Yes. I think I say if you are new to us, just because you wanted to consume some Brighton content, come and join us again. It's good fun. We talk about all sorts of shite. We give some picks out. We will have a Premier League future show going out on Monday, possibly Tuesday this week. We'll make all our bets for the season. And then on Wednesday night, we'll do the weekly pick show. So we'll look at all the games for the weekend. We'll give out picks for all of them. We've also got the Women's World Cup going at the same time. I had a winner in that, Baz. Japan done the biz for me this morning, which I needed because I think I took the unders in that Spain game. And it was 4-1 after about 20 minutes. I took under 1.5 goals. But yeah, Japan, my luck of the day. Japan were brilliant today. One of the best performances I've seen in the women's game, possibly ever. They were absolutely outstanding. So all sorts of things for you to come and join us on. Like, rate, review, thumbs up, subscribe. And until we speak to you again, we'll see you down